Okay, we are here today with Eric Kraus, and he is my first podcast for the simple reason that I knew he had great stories to tell. He was upbeat and he had a value system that wasn't based on climbing over the troops to get to where he was. And I know he's dealt with a lot of the stalwarts in industry. So I thought we would talk a little bit about success and how you define it, both personally and professionally. So, Eric, thanks for being here. And
Great to see you, Michael.
we'll just start gabbing. We'll tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. And it's always great to see you. And yeah, this is a topic. And, I've had this conversation. I have a dear friend, John Lippris, who was a managing partner and one of the owners of a huge public relations agency in New York called Taylor Strategies. And he recently was the keynote speaker at Marist University's graduate school. And his whole speech to the grad students was basically on this subject. And it's something that is very dear to him and very dear to me. And I've kind of modeled my career and my reflection of my career on what does success really mean. And, when you asked me that, I reflected back and, in the most simplest terms, success without purpose is empty. It's not about titles. It's not about bank accounts. It's about making a difference. And I know that a lot of people say that, but if you're not doing that day in, day out, it just doesn't matter. And I'm often reminded by my son, who's a teaching pro at a golf course. And he is always telling me, listen, play one set of tees up because you'll enjoy the course. There's always someone that's going to hit the ball farther than you. There's always someone that's going to score lower than you. And it's the same way in business. There's always someone who's going to have more money than you. And there's always someone who's worked at better companies or has had bigger titles. But at the end of the day, that isn't fulfilling. And what's fulfilling is your impact on the people in your teams, your impact in the communities in which you're working, and your impact on just making people's lives better.
Boy, that's the truth. That matter of fact, I was talking to a friend the other day who said that his greatest joy was with the people he worked for. And
Right.
he this fellow worked in corporate America almost his entire life from the time he got out of college.
Right.
And he said all he wants to do now is speak. It's all he
Right.
wants to do is just speak. And matter of fact, he asked me, he goes, could you get me speaking engagement? I go, yeah, I can get you podcasts all day if
Right.
you want. Um, but he said the best times he's ever had were, we're talking to folks that listened.
Right.
And unfortunately, we have to kind of get older or get here to have anybody listen. And there's a short window I found, Eric, because in another few years they'll go, oh, they're out of it. We'll be drooling, and they'll give us a bit and put us in the corner.
Yeah. You have to figure it out early because if your whole measure is creating generational wealth or how many boards you're sitting on or was I a CEO, and you don't figure that out early, it's going to warp you. And, it's a gift without getting spiritual. It's a gift to be on this planet and you don't know when that's going to end. Case in point, I had a unbelievable colleague at Gillette, a gentleman by the name of Ed Shirley, who after we sold the company to Procter and Gamble, he stayed at P&G and I moved on. And he was vice chair and then he was named CEO of Bacardi. And I went and was his chief of staff and ran a couple functions for him in Bermuda at Bacardi. Well, he retired a few years ago, very wealthy, very accomplished. but unfortunately had brain cancer. He battled it for 18 months and then he passed. And as much as I love Ed and I continue to love him, it was such a rude awakening that I have to reflect back, and I want people to reflect back on me, the person, and me, the professional, and what I did to promote them, what I did to make people's lives better, because it can be over like that.
Yeah, my grandfather used to have an expression that I've used 1,000 times. Tomorrow is promised to no one.
Correct.
And it's true.
And I even reflect back now, my deepest fulfillment comes from my two boys, community, and service. And those are the things that last. It's not any of the deals I did. And don't get me wrong, I had a blessed career. I worked with some phenomenal people. I did, as you know, Michael, I did the naming rights deal for Gillette Stadium for a number of entities. I had an absolute blast in corporate America. However, when you reflect back as you're looking after you've left that, you have to ask yourself, what is really important, right? And to me, the biggest accomplishment I've had is, of all the people that worked for me and with me, 8 or 9 of them are chief communication or chief marketing officers at large companies. And they got there because they worked with me. They took parts of my playbook and they're implementing it, and they don't forget, and they never have forgotten. And it's like the biggest accomplishment is that I helped develop tomorrow's leaders.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, my most fun were watching the guys run the companies that I sold them.
Right.
Our kids are running one of our companies now. I never made the kind of money they're making.
Right.
And they're in their 50s.
Right. But it's also different. I mean, when I talk to my millennial children and I talk to Gen Zs, it's just a different environment than when you and I came up. There are different ways about accomplishing your work. It's just a completely different environment. But sweat equity, being honest, being transparent are still tenets that will help you be successful at whatever job that you're going to do. And as you move up, you can never forget what got you there, and you can never forget how important giving 100% is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that probably, if I had any regrets, it's that I didn't spend enough time enjoying what I was doing. I was too busy running.
Correct.
When you're younger, you're driving and
Right.
and now I look back and go, God, I had such great times, but I never sat there and went, this is really fun.
Right.
Because it is. When you're in the hunt, it's a ball.
Oh my God. And ultimately it cost me my marriage, which is the biggest disappointment and tragedy in my life. However, when you're caught up in it, I was working 70, 80, 90 hours every single week for 30 years, and I should have dialed it back. But when you're caught up in it, you don't even realize it. And, I had global jobs. I was averaging a little over 160,000 miles a year on a plane. And I was in markets every single week doing my responsibilities, leading teams, introducing new products, whatever it was. I didn't take the time I needed in my own life. And when I reflect back, I bang my head against the desk saying, you know what? I'm better than that. I should have realized it. And that's a part of success too. Having the right balance, realizing all of the inbounds that you're getting from external sources, and making sure that you're managing yourself to be the best person you can be, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I agree. I look at my kids and, they pretty much got it right. thank God. And it not because of me. Maybe because of me, but not because I told them. Probably I showed them by example.
Right.
This is not the way to do it. You know,
Right.
that they spend time here. Mike, our kids just sold everything, bought this huge fifth wheel and a new
Right.
truck, and they go see their kids, then they go see the other one. Now they're in Oklahoma for their son's wedding. They
Yeah.
spent a month. And they work. Thank God for Musk. They work. They use his satellite, and they work 8 to 4, and then they call it a day. They go out to work. They go out to dinner. They spent I think they spent 2 or 3 weeks in New Orleans last month. I'm going, man, they got it right. Because
Yeah.
you
No,
and I would go to New Orleans. We'd have a meeting. We'd go out at night, get half in the bag, and get back on a plane.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's I mean, it's figuring out that balance. My eldest son followed in my footsteps, and he's 31. So much better than I ever was at 31. He's in public affairs for a large financial institution. But about 6 years ago, I called him. We talked almost every day, and I said, Timmy, you sound horrible. He said, Dad, I've put in 40 hours this week and it's only Thursday. And I'm looking at him and I felt like a failure, right? And I get off the phone and I'm just beyond upset. And to his credit, he called me back about 10 minutes later and he said, probably the wrong guy to use that line on. And I said, probably you're right. He said, Tim, you have to differentiate yourself, and work ethic is the way to do it. There's so many smart people out there. There are so many people that want to get ahead. So the two kernels of wisdom I can give you is work ethic, making sure that you're doing it better, faster, and longer than the people to your left, people to your right. And you have to have some purpose in there, because success without purpose is really empty. And to his credit, he took that and he's been highly successful since then. And he's involved in nonprofit work, and he's getting so much more out of the professional side of his life.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, one of the things, because you've talked to me about it 2 or 3 times, but I always wanted to hear the backstory of Gillette, how you got that, because here, when you drive by the stadium, you get to look up and go, yeah.
Yeah. It was a wonderful opportunity for the Gillette company. Gillette was the second longest sponsor of the Patriots. We had a great relationship. Gillette's manufacturing facility was in South Boston. Our corporate offices downtown Boston in the Gillette Tower. Robert Kraft and the family were building this new stadium, and it was the AFC Championship game in '01, and I'm walking on the field with Robert and Jonathan Kraft, and I said to them, with the new stadium, you didn't approach us, and it was going to be called CMGI Field, which was a internet bubble company, really successful. And, they said, listen, we want this roof. This company needs the exposure. It's going to be highly successful. And I'm going to myself, this company is not going to be around in 5 years. So I'm walking and we get off the field before the game. Patriots beat the Steelers and went on to win a Super Bowl that year. And my last comment to both Jonathan and Robert were, well, when that company blows up, give me a call. And 6 months after that game and my comment, the phone rang and we started the negotiation for it. And at Gillette, we were the longest running sports marketer in the world. A lot of what we did dated back to 1905, 1906. And we had very strong roots in World Cup. We had very strong roots in cricket. We sponsored a television show on sports that rivaled ABC ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Wow.
Sports was such an inherent area for us because it was masculine. You think of male shaving,
Right.
our campaign, The Best a Man Can Get.
Yeah.
It had so many inroads. And here's this new stadium, and it's in the shadows of our factory and our corporate offices. And you wanted to connect the excellence of Gillette with the excellence of the NFL and the excellence of the Patriots. And it just worked out. And we did a 10-year deal. And I think Procter and Gamble has renewed that contract 3 or 4 times because it just makes a heck of a lot of sense. And it was highly successful. We then, you have a sponsorship like that. It's not only paying to have the sponsorship, it's all about activation. So how are you going to activate and, have that connection with the consumer? So there were Patriot hospitality, Patriot razors, Patriot this, Patriot that, and it was really successful for Gillette, and it's something I'm really proud of. So
That's cool.
but on the same token, one of the coolest things I did at Gillette was the Gillette Centers for Women's Cancers. And we had 2 women's cancer centers, one at Mass General and one at Dana-Farber, well before medicine is what it is today. This was back in a time when you would go to different offices, you'd have your scans here, you would hope a week later when you saw your primary that the scans even made it there. I mean, this is well before what technology has done to healthcare. And we created centers in the 2 leading cancer hospitals in Massachusetts for our female products. And it was, you saw the same team of doctors from your very first visit to your very last post-surgical visit. And that was, a team that was with you through the entire journey. And to me, that was every bit as special as the Gillette Stadium deal was.
Wow, that's very cool. Well,
Right.
I often wondered because everything we do in marketing, you have to quantify, and you
Right.
should. And
Right.
I often wondered, how the hell do you track quantifying Gillette Stadium? It's like,
Right.
okay, how do you go, we spent whatever, 10 million a year, whatever it is, that how does that go to the bottom line? Can we see the effects, or are we, and I'll tell you why I've asked, because I remember when P&G had ivory snowflakes. Do you know the story? That
Yep.
that guy came in and he goes, everybody, I think they did a poll and it was like 98% of the country knew he said, so we're going to stop average branding. It didn't affect the thing one bit. And then that guy started direct mail,
Mhm.
and they actually sold more ivory snowflakes. So
Right.
because of that, I look at these big branding deals and go, I'm pretty sure they work, but how do you quantify them?
It depends on the product. It depends on the brand. For Gillette, it was very difficult because this wasn't our only marketing effort. This was incremental to what we were doing on a global scale. And Gillette also was the 6th best known brand in the world during this time.
Wow.
And so you had different advertising campaigns throughout the world. You had a ton of sports sponsorships. So to isolate just this was extremely difficult. Now, if you're selling Patriot logoed razors, you see a direct correlation. But it was one part of a much broader marketing mix. But you can't quantify client entertainment. You can't quantify the ability to use the marks in other ways. It's just really difficult, but it's working. And the other thing that hindered Gillette is we had such a large market share. I think at that time it was like 78% in the US,
Wow.
if not greater. So to get to 79, 80, 81 would have been astronomical. However, when times get tough, if you're not doing these things, then you can't just start them. So it was every bit an insurance policy as it was the lead in all of our marketing efforts.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and it made sense, and it continues to make sense. And it's a great association to equate the excellence of your products and your brand with the excellence of probably the number one sport, in the U.S. and probably the number 2 or 3 sport in the world.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
cool. That's
yeah,
cool.
it was a good run, and something that obviously is to this day really important to me. And I still have an extremely strong relationship with the Patriots. When I went and launched Covidian, we were a sponsor there. And then, our friend Alan McKim and Clean Harbors, they use the suite there for business and some brand identity as well. So it's a viable marketing tool, and you just have to activate it, because if you just pay and you do nothing else, you're not going to get the value out of it.
Got it. I think I told you I was sitting on a plane next to the gal who sold her and her husband sold the team to Bob Kraft.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'll never forget what she said. She goes, "That was a honey of an investment." Those
Yeah.
were her exact words.
Yeah, and he got it at a very decent price, and he has done such a fantastic job. His son Jonathan, is president and has really done a terrific job. What they've done internationally, to get interest in the sport, and the associations that they have now with the power brokers outside of the U.S., is, Harvard Business School case study, quite frankly. And
Really?
then you have Major League Soccer team, the New England Revolution. I think they had 10 or 11 concerts at Gillette Stadium this summer. So it's pretty busy throughout the entire year, and the team, you'd like to say that they could plan for 20 years of a dynasty, but they did quite well. And, now it's one of the most valued franchises in professional sports. And
Yeah.
it's great to be associated with that.
We just watched, I don't know if you've seen it. It's on Netflix about the Cowboys.
Yeah.
It's really, I can't believe how much money, because I came from television, how
Right.
much money they spent to produce that,
Right.
about that. And Jerry Jones is stark naked. I mean, he just tells, here's where I screwed up. My ego got in the way with Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
It was really it's really well done.
And think about the number of fans the Cowboys still have today, and they have not been back to the dance in a very long.
Over 30 years.
And it just shows you how powerful a brand is.
Yep.
It's extremely interesting. And that's a product, that brand is no different than a Mach 3 Razor or a car, or pick any category. It's a lead brand, and you can't forget about that.
Yeah. He tells the story about his father, and his wife called her father and had him fly in because Jerry was in so much debt he thought he was going to kill himself. He was going to hurt himself. I thought,
Right.
man. But those stories are great stories.
Yeah.
Tell me how I never heard, how did you and Alan hook up?
I was coming back from Bacardi and wanted to work in Massachusetts where my family was. And we were introduced through a mutual friend, and he said, "You know what? We have done such a lousy job with marketing. We really don't have a communications function. I would love for you to join." And I said, "Okay." And I talked to a couple people in the company. He hired me. And I went there kind of knowing that I'd be there 4 or 5 years. I was either in consumer products or healthcare in my career. Going to environmental services was quite a stretch, but I had such a good relationship with Alan, and he needed some help. So I went there, and I had a very strong 5 years at the company. We we did a lot of really cool things. We started to market the communications externally and with internal and external shareholders was so much better during my tenure than it had been in the past. We implemented, and ensured that we had a crisis communications plan, especially given the work that they did day in, day out. And we were just doing some fun things, but my time frame was always 4 to 5 years, and he and I parted ways. But even when you part ways, that doesn't mean the relationship has to end. And as you know, about a year and a half, 2 years after I left Clean Harbors, Alan called me and said, "You always wanted to write that book with me on me and the company. What do you say?" And I had a small consulting business at the time, and I said, "Let's do it." And for the better part of 2 years, Alan and we had a writer in the UK by the name of Steve Eggleston. The three of us wrote his book called Doing the Doing. And it was a smash success, sold on Amazon. And he was exceptionally happy with the end product because he was a very blue-collar guy growing up in a suburb of Boston, didn't have two nickels to rub together growing up. And, he's the epitome of success, right? He is, he's a person that we should probably get on this podcast because you would never know how successful the guy is by talking to him. He is so philanthropically centered with his own foundation and what he does at Northeastern University. He's a trustee there. And, he's a huge benefactor with South Shore Hospital and so many other charitable endeavors. And he really walks the walk when we mention things like success with purpose. He is a mentor of mine in that area, and a guy that just knows the value of giving back.
Yeah, when we were promoting the book, the one thing is I'm pretty much an insomniac. I go to bed early and I wake up between 1:30 and 2, and then I work for a few hours and then try to go back to sleep.
I would get emails from you at 12:30, 2:30.
He would write me back at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, I went, how the hell is this guy at his age and this stage of his career?
Yeah.
He's still up working.
There were three in my career: Alan McKim, CEO of Clean Harbors, Rich Melia, CEO of Covidian, and Mike Hawley, who was CEO of Gillette for a short period of time. If you met them on the street, you would never know how successful those three gentlemen were because it didn't matter to them, right? And it's really important my kids learned because my kids got to know them and they were blown away. You would not have known if Alan McKim was the plumber coming to your house to fix a leak or a guy that's probably worth close to $1 billion today. You would have no way because it didn't matter to him. And I can remember during my 5 years at Clean Harbors, Alan drove a red pickup truck, and when it snowed and we had a huge facility, 500-car parking lot, Alan would plow the lot himself because he didn't want to pay a plowing service.
Unbelievable.
True story. To this day, even that he's trying to whittle down his hours, he plows the lot there. And he never forgot where he came from, nor did Rich Melia, nor did Mike Hawley. And they all shared the common characteristic that success isn't how much money you have in the bank. Success is what you do with your life and how you bring others along.
Very cool. Yeah, I liked working with him.
Yeah, terrific guy, down to earth. And as you know, the book, he really wanted a book that a truck driver at Clean Harbors can get as much out of as much as someone in the C-suite. And I think we accomplished that.
Yeah, I did too. It's a hell of a book. I rarely read them more than once, and I read that book twice.
Yeah, I mean, he started Clean Harbors. It's a $5 billion publicly held company with, a wallet full of, I think, $143 or something like that, and a beat up old pickup truck. And it's amazing what it is today. And that's because of his sweat equity, his determination, a couple lucky breaks. But at the end of the day, it's because of work ethic and what you put into the business.
Yeah. Well, maybe somebody can get something out of the old stories we tell.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And as I said, the new generation coming in, it's not as easy as it may look. And there's always going to be issues. There's always going to be positive and negative impacts on your business. But if you have a North Star, if you're grounded in a mission and you know where you want to go, you just have to have the patience to go at a pace that makes sense. And if you get hung up on paychecks and titles, then you're not going to be as successful as those people who know that it's much greater than that. And I believe that, and I see it in action in my sons, and I see it in action in a lot of the young people who I still mentor today.
Good advice. Hey,
Yeah.
love spending the time with you. I loved it. And I'm happy to talk to anybody you want me to talk to.
Yeah, I will give you a couple ideas because there's a couple people far smarter than me that can really drive home these points.
I'll take you up on it.
Okay, you got it. It's
Thanks,
great seeing
buddy.
you, my friend.
All right.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
cheers.